Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Here to wish you a very happy Morrissey Monday, a weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths. And yes, I'm aware you don't have to remind me that I am once again a day late in posting this week's episode. Throwing these things up on Tuesdays has become an unfortunate trend that I have fallen into. I do apologize for that. But hear me out. Let me explain myself. Sundays and Mondays are usually my two busiest days of the week. And it isn't always easy for me to pull myself away, come up here into my record room and act like an obnoxious ass for an hour or so. But rest assured, I'm here. Climb in off that ledge, my friend. I'm here to provide you with another half hour or so of nonsensical bullshit. Anyway, for this week's episode, we're going to go back to the Your Arsenal tour in December of 1992 as we take a look at one of Morrissey's most forgotten is probably not really the right word. I would say one of the most perhaps overlooked albums in Morrissey's catalog, and that is the 1993 live album Beethoven Was Deaf. Now, I've mentioned this in the past. I am a huge fan of all of the Morrissey live releases, whether it is the home videos, whether it is the albums, or bonus tracks off of these sort of deluxe editions of albums that come out during the remastering process. Really, there's two reasons why I'm such a huge fan of these. One, because in my opinion, any artist is only as good as they are live. And in that sense, Morrissey is covered. In my opinion, when Morrissey is on, I definitely think that he is as good as any live artist in the history of rock and roll. And two, really, my favorite thing about these recordings is that they do provide historical documents. These are archive pieces that take you back in time to some of these, tours. And as we all are getting older, Morrissey included, these are days, a lot of these are days in the past, never to be revisited again, but we can go back and we can listen to it. I know in my experience, the Your Arsenal tour was something that I didn't get a chance to see. I think I've mentioned before on this channel that my Morrissey fandom was spawned in the spring of 1994. I was late to the party. I admit it. I'm not sitting here denying anything. So, in 1992, I wasn't yet a Morrissey fan. But through the miracle of this recording, I can go back and I can sort of experience what the Your Arsenal tour was, or at least what it sounded like, at least what the set list was. And I've mentioned this before, and this is probably somewhat of a sad and pathetic conversation piece for a man who is in his mid-40s. But if I had a time machine, a musical time machine, and I could go back and experience, various, Morrissey events throughout his career, going back and seeing the Your Arsenal tour is something that I would be all in on. For me, Your Arsenal was the second album I ever owned. In terms of my Morrissey fandom, the first record I ever owned was still my favorite album, not only of Morrissey's, my favorite album of all time, which is Bone and Drag. But I really believe that it was when I bought Your Arsenal, which was the second record of his I ever bought. It went from me saying, oh yeah, I like this album by Morrissey. To me, this was the album that really kind of cemented my fandom of him. Because, when you have one album by an artist, it can be, the greatest thing you've ever heard. And then, you go out and you purchase other records, and sometimes it's like, man, nothing else in their catalog is very good. So for me, Your Arsenal is a sentimental favorite because, to me, it was really the first time I actually considered myself to be a Morrissey fan and not just a fan, basically, of Bone and Drag. I was thinking about this recently. Actually, I was thinking about this right before Morrissey was supposed to do the 20th anniversary shows for, You Are the Quarry. In 2022 was the 30th anniversary of the release of Your Arsenal. I can't even believe that. I mean, my high school reunion, or whatever you call it, is 30 years ago this year. And no, I do not plan on attending. If I did show up at my high school reunion, for one thing, nobody would even remember who I was. I was a total nerd in high school. And I wasn't even like the type of nerd that really got, picked on or abused so much. I was just somebody that was kind of like wallpaper, behind what was actually going on in the school. So nobody would even remember me. But to think that was 30 years ago, and 2 years ago was the 30th anniversary of, Your Arsenal. I was thinking about this leading up to the ill-fated, You Are the Quarry shows. It would have been really amazing if Morrissey would have done some sort of a 30th anniversary celebration for You Are the Quarry, maybe a tour, maybe some live shows. Now, I realize that is a divisive subject within the Morrissey fan community, because a lot of Morrissey fans aren't necessarily in love with him doing the nostalgia thing. I think that was something that, a lot of people pointed out when the You Are the Quarry shows were announced. And I'm disagreeing in the sense that I was excited. I thought that's a record that's worth celebrating. I thought the idea was a cool idea. But I'm also agreeing in the sense, if you are one of those people who are anti, the whole nostalgia trip, that's something that Morrissey has always sort of poo-pooed. It's something that he always kind of, denied that he would participate in. But I do think in 2022, had he done something to celebrate, the 30th anniversary of Your Arsenal, dusted off a lot of those, songs live for the first time. And if you go back, and it would have been amazing, if you go back and listen to this record, Beethoven Was Deaf, I mean, the live performance of all of these songs on this record are unbelievable. To me, this record is every bit as good as, Rank and Live at Earl's Court. This record was recorded on December 20th, 1992 in London, England, and December 22nd, 1992 in Paris, France. I love the set list on this record. This record features every song off of Your Arsenal, with the exception of Tomorrow, which is everything off Your Arsenal is one of my favorite songs off Your Arsenal, but Tomorrow is really one of my favorite songs off Your Arsenal. Of course, this record features, in my opinion, the greatest Morrissey live band or solo band throughout his entire career. Gary Day, Spencer Coburn, Alan White, and Boz Bohr. Now, there are a million things to argue about in the Morrissey fan community. That's one of the great fun things about being a diehard fan, I think of any artist, and that is the debates and the arguments that you can get into, respectfully and lovingly. But one thing that is non-debatable, in my opinion, it is just fact. If you disagree with it, you're wrong. Some people say there's no such thing as a wrong opinion. However, if you disagree with this opinion, you are wrong. And that is, to me, this is the greatest Morrissey solo band ever. I mean, behind the Smiths, this is pretty much my favorite band of all time. If you go back and you listen to this record in particular, which like I said, I think this record is every bit as good as Rank and Live at Earl's Court. For some reason, this record, I think, gets a little bit overlooked. Sometimes I consider this record to be, like I said, forgotten's kind of a strong word, but, I think fitting a little bit when you talk about some of the other records in Morrissey's catalog. To me, though, if you go back and you listen to this record, the performance on this record is very straightforward. There's not a lot of banter on this record. I don't know if it was just edited out, which it probably was. But there's very little sort of Morrissey goofery on this album that you have gotten on some of the other live recordings. But the live recordings on this record are absolutely incredible. They are very true, most of them, are very true to the the studio versions. I mentioned this last week when I was talking about going to see Iron Maiden with my friend when they played with the band Dream Theater. When you go see Iron Maiden live, and I'm not a huge Iron Maiden fan, I'm not really a metal guy just in general, but when I went to see Iron Maiden, this is kind of a strange complaint, I guess, but one complaint I had when I went to go see Iron Maiden live was that the songs sounded just almost like too perfect, almost like too much like a recording, like the recordings. There was like no improvisation, and I'm not saying that this record, matches those traits, but it is very true to the recorded version. I think it's probably because Morrissey's band on this record is just the best. They're so tight. And of course, this is the band that recorded these records, so it makes sense, I guess, in that sense. Anyway, the first song on this live recording is a song from Your Arsenal, You're the One for Me, Fatty. Really good version of this song. I've always said this about the song You Are the One for Me, Fatty. If there's one song off Your Arsenal which is my least favorite, it is easily You're the One for Me, Fatty. I don't dislike the song. To me, this is the solo equivalent to Girlfriend in a Coma, another song I don't hate. I don't dislike it, but it's a song, especially in the case of Girlfriend in a Coma, it's just completely overplayed. You're the One for Me, Fatty. It's okay. It's kind of silly. The thing I like about You're the One for Me, Fatty is I love the video. It's one of my favorite videos in Morrissey's catalog. I love the scene in the video where the guy shows up at the young lady's door, and he's dressed up. He's got flowers. They're clearly getting ready to go out on a date. And I love, when she answers the door, after he knocks on it, she is doing some demolition work on like a big bag of potato chips. That's a joke I don't know that you could necessarily get away with today with the sort of, body positive movement and all that. And I'm not sitting here saying that you should, call people fatty, boomba laddie. It's just an innocent joke. I love the video for You're the One for Me, Fatty. As a song, it's my least favorite song off Your Arsenal. This is a good version of it, though. I think it's an interesting choice to kick off the record. The next song after that is a song called Certain People I Know. This is a really good live version of this song. Again, another song off of Your Arsenal, a song off Your Arsenal that I love. The most noteworthy thing about this particular live performance is right sort of at the end of the first verse. Morrissey kind of forgets the lyrics, so he kind of does the thing where he just kind of like bop, bop, bop at the very end of the first verse. Very good version of this song, though. Again, very true to the studio version. Musically, like I said on this record, they are spot on. And Morrissey's live performance on this, apart from really him forgetting the verse forgetting the words at the end of the first verse on Certain People I Know, it's really good as well. The next song on this record is National Front Disco. Again, musically very spot on. Morrissey's performance of this song is good. I would make the argument, maybe just on this particular track, that Morrissey's voice is just like a little bit flat during the chorus, and then at the very end of the song, they do a really long, extended, I don't know if you want to say jam session when it comes to Morrissey, but the song kind of tails on it for about 3 minutes of, interesting, sort of an interesting jam session. At the very end, Morrissey does joke. I mentioned that there's not as much banter and goofery on this live album as the other ones, but he does sort of joke at the end of that long jam session that they are considering turning that into a single and asking the crowd if they think it will be successful. Speaking of National Front Disco and this sort of ideology, I don't know if it was a national story, but it certainly was a conversation stimulator down here in our little, southern town here down in Nashville. But Saturday, downtown Nashville on Saturday, we had what you might consider a legitimate Nazi rally. Now, I am of the opinion that the word Nazi gets overused in today's society. I think it's a word that sometimes has lost its meaning. I really don't like, as much as I am not a Trump guy, I do not like Trump at all. But I also don't like it when people say, Trump's a Nazi. He's worse than Hitler. For one thing, I think that is just historically inaccurate. And two, that's just a very sort of dangerous thing to say. Both of my grandfathers were around during World War II. And I hate to think I hate to imagine what they would think if they heard people saying that, Trump was worse than Hitler or, a Nazi. So I think sometimes, labeling somebody that you disagree with politically as Hitler or as a Nazi, I think is somewhat dangerous. I think it dilutes its meaning. I think it waters down the language. Those are all things that I am not really a fan of. That being said, however, Saturday here in Nashville, Tennessee, downtown, I was out all day on Saturday. I have an alibi, by the way. But I was out all day Saturday, so I didn't really catch any wind of this until my wife got home from work on Saturday. And she came in and she's like, "Did you see what happened downtown?" And sadly, I don't know if this is a commentary on me or just the current state of our society, but the first thing that leapt into my mind was it must have been some sort of a shooting. We had a shooting at a school here in Nashville last year. And when she asked me if I had heard what happened downtown, and I could sort of the tone of her voice, sadly, that was the first thing I thought. But no, it wasn't a shooting. There was a little bit of a gathering in downtown Nashville, Tennessee on Saturday. A white neo-Nazi group. They refer to themselves as Blood Tribe. Had a gathering of about 24 young rogue scholars, and when, like I said, when people use the word Nazi, I sort of cringe because I think they're misusing the word. But I went and I found the video, and sure enough, these group of people, like I said, I think they estimate it was between 20 and 24 guys carrying, the Nazi flags, the swastikas, marching through downtown. Apparently, they were protesting Black History Month. There is some video of it on YouTube if you're interested in seeing it. One thing that's funny about this group of people, they're called Blood Tribe, apparently. I had no idea who they were. I'm not exactly, current on my white separatist groups. But one thing I thought was interesting during the video that somebody had posted online was this group of guys are downtown Nashville on Saturday, and they're chanting, pride, white power, all this crap. But of course, all their faces are covered in masks. And the first thing I think of, or the first thing I'd like to know, apparently, is if you're so proud, why don't you show yourself? I mean, come on, put your money where your mouth is. Let's have some balls. Let's see your faces. I mean, are you worried that if your mom sees you on TV, she's going to kick you out of her basement? So this was pretty crazy, and it wasn't a huge thing. Like I said, it was about 20 people in downtown Nashville. But man, if you look it up on video, like I said, I don't know that this made national headlines necessarily, but we had ourselves a little Nazi rally in our quiet southern hamlet on Saturday. Made me think of the song National Front Disco. I love this version of this song. Like I said, during the chorus, Morrissey's voice is a little bit flat. The next song after that is November Spawned a Monster. This was, if I go back to my earliest days within my Morrissey fandom, my favorite song of all time is Every Day's Like Sunday. It's my favorite Morrissey song. It's my favorite song of all time. But as I was first beginning to get into Morrissey, and I first began listening to Bona Drag, The song November Spawned a Monster was probably my first favorite Morrissey song. I love every version of this song that I can get my hands on. I think I've seen November Spawned a Monster live a couple times in my Morrissey concert career. I really like this version of it. The middle segment of this song, there's this sort of trumpet solo, which is just like the jugs on this recording. Another great version of the song. The band, musically, of course, is just spot on throughout this entire record. The next song after that is, if it's not my favorite song off Your Arsenal, it is really high on the list, and that is Seasick, Yet Still Docked. This is a song that Morrissey needs to bring out of retirement, bring back to the live stage. Man, that would be so snug to see this song live again. This particular version of this song is probably my favorite version of this song I've ever heard, apart from the studio version. If anybody, to me, being a Morrissey fan, sometimes you sort of get used to people dismissing him and poo-pooing him, and you find yourself defending him a lot, defending your fandom a lot. If anybody, poo-poos or dismisses Morrissey as an artist, Seasick Yet Still Docked is one of the songs I always, bring into my artillery when I'm defending, or I use as artillery, I should say, when I'm defending Morrissey as a singer and a songwriter and just as an artist in general. This song always makes me think of when I was back in college. My first semester when I was in college, I met this girl, and her and I became very close friends pretty much immediately. We spent pretty much every day together on campus walking around. We spent our lunch breaks together hanging out in the quad. It got to the point to where we spent a lot of time together off campus. She was really into music. She was a big record collector, CD collector, record collector. So we used to, go to record stores. We'd go have coffee. We'd go have lunch together all the time. And in pretty short order, I began to develop very intense feelings for this girl. Dare I say, I may have felt at the time, at least, like I was in love with her. But at this stage of my life, I was very young. I was very awkward. I had basically very little self-confidence. I wasn't never sure how to sort of, elevate that relationship from level A to level B. And I used to just pine over this girl. Every day after school, I would go home, and I had this small apartment I lived in alone. It was the first apartment I ever lived in outside of my parents' house. Now, eventually, I moved into a house with a bunch of college dudes. But my first year out of my parents' house, I had my own sort of little apartment. And I remember every day after school, I would drive home, and I would just analyze every aspect of every conversation we had that day. I would evaluate everything she said. I would try to, think, okay, what does this mean? What did that mean? Why did I say that? I'm so dumb. And I remember a lot of times I would go home, and I would have, by the time I drove home from campus, I would have beaten myself up. I was, on the inside, I was just bruised and battered by my own self-verbal abuse. And I remember I'd go home and I would listen to this song, Seasick Yet Docked. I would go home, I'd get in my bed, and I would listen to this song on repeat for hours, literally for hours, pining over this girl, overthinking everything I had said. At a certain point, after a year and a half of us just being friends, basically she started dating another guy, and I got really tweaked out about it. I couldn't handle it. It was not something that I, handled well. I admit it. Not something I'm proud of. I remember talking to one of my friends. I think it may have even been my best friend at the time. And I was like, how could she do this to me, man? And he's like, dude, you guys were just friends. You should have swung when you were at bat. She probably has moved on. She may have had these feelings. Who knows? Nobody knows. I don't know. but it's past. You struck out. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Anyway, I did not handle it well. And it sort of ended up killing our friendship. Fortunately, when my friends sort of talked me down, it helped me a little bit, at least see the error of my ways. But I always think of that when I think of the song Seasick Yet Still Docked, was just putting this song on repeat for hours, just like pining over this girl that I was friends with. The next song after that is The Loop. This is a semi-good version of this song. The song The Loop is a song I've always sort of been lukewarm on. It is a song that extracts like a strong opinion from me one way or the other. I've seen him perform it live several times over the years. It's okay. I think on this record, Beethoven Was Deaf, I definitely think it's the weakest song on the record. It's probably, in my opinion, it's probably the weakest song on the set list, at least the one that made the cut of the record, at least. The next song after that is a song called Sister, I'm a Poet. Man, I love this song. This is a song I also have seen him do live a few times. I never get tired of this song. I used to have this really annoying habit. Well, it was probably annoying. I probably thought I was being real hilarious. But every time I would say something that either rhymed, or something I thought was profound, I would walk around and say, Sister Emma, for like half an hour. And I'm sure people just want to like twist me into a pretzel every time I did that. And for some reason, it was never not funny to me. But it's a good version of the song. This is a song, Sister, I'm a Poet, that I have not seen him do live in a while. I would, to say he should bring this song out of retirement, I would agree with. But would you bring this song out of retirement before other ones that I'd rather hear? Probably not. But I do like the song, Sister, I'm a Poet. The next song after that is, man, one of my favorite live songs of all time. Whether it's Morrissey's catalog or anybody's catalog, that is Jack the Ripper. Every time I go see Morrissey, this is a song I desperately want to be in the playlist. This is a great version of this song on Beethoven Was Deaf. I don't actually think, to be honest with you, I don't think I have ever heard a version of this song live that was not the Groceries. He played this song this past year down here in Memphis and Nashville on his 40 years of Morrissey tour. The second night in Nashville, this song was the encore. This song had just a very dramatic, beautiful, awesome stage production on this past tour. In fact, we saw him the second night in Nashville. He played at a place called the Fisher Center on the campus of Belmont University. The place is just unbelievable. I mean, Nashville is a place that has got some world-class music venues, as I'm sure you can imagine. But the Fisher Center might be, the penthouse of music venues in Nashville. That place is insane. I've never been to a music venue like that before. In fact, even going to see any sort of a rock show there. Now, Morrissey's not, bombastic, like you're going to see, a punk or a metal show, obviously. But even seeing something like Morrissey felt a little bit out of place there. But the place is just gorgeous. The sound is impeccable. Morrissey, even Morrissey in all of his sort of, worldliness and snobbery, he had to be impressed by that place. I mean, that place is unbelievable. But the second night at the Fisher Center at Belmont University, Morrissey played Jack the Ripper as the encore. And they let off so much smoke from the smoke machines during that song in Nashville that it actually triggered the smoke alarm, and the house lights came up, and it kind of killed the effect of the whole show. But man, Jack the Ripper, every time I go see Morrissey, this is a song I desperately want to be in the set list. I've seen him do this song several times over the years. Never to say Steve never disappoints me, but I've been to shows where he doesn't play Jack the Ripper, and I leave a little bit verklempt. if you know what I mean. The next song is Such a Little Thing, Makes Such a Big Difference. This is a very abbreviated version of this song on this record. It's good. It's just basically like a minute and a half long. He goes into just a very kind of like the first, verse or so. And then it's good though. And then he jumps right into, I Know It's Gonna Happen Someday. I really love the version of this song on this record. Again, I've said it before, the band is spot on. But this song in particular, I Know It's Gonna Happen Someday. Morrissey's performance throughout this entire record is incredible. He's very true to the record. But I think on this particular recording of I Know It's Gonna Happen Someday, it almost sounds like they're just playing the record over the PA. His voice is just perfect to the album on that song. Another song, the next song off this album is We'll Let You Know. Another song off of your arsenal that I absolutely love. I was thinking about this as I was re-listening to this record this week. I don't know if I have ever seen We'll Let You Know live. And again, I really like this version of this song. I love the song We'll Let You Know off the record. If I were handed a list of songs that he were going to bring out of retirement for maybe another big tour, it would have to depend on what the song was up against, whether or not it's one that I would really kill to see live. Of songs I haven't, I'm pretty sure I have not ever seen We'll Let You Know live. I do like that song. I love it on the record. The next song after that, I've seen this song live before, is Suede Head. I think of the shows I've been to of Morrissey, which I've seen him 12 times over the years, which is probably not as many as you have, I admit it. But of all the times I've seen Morrissey over the years, dating back to the Maladjusted Tour in 1997, that was my first live show, I'm pretty sure that Suede Head is the only song I have seen him play every single time. And this is a very good live version of Suede Head on this record. And I have to admit, I wish I could be more jaded and cynical when it comes to Morrissey. But every time I've seen him play this song live, it still gets me excited. Now, it's not necessarily my favorite song in Morrissey's catalog. It is, it's a crowd pleaser of his solo career. It's, arguably his biggest solo hit. I wish I could be more cynical and jaded and be, I hate this song when he plays it live and stand there with my arms folded. But I still love hearing it live. It's not quite as snug as seeing, other songs that I would rather see. I mean, my favorite song of all time is Every Day is Like Sunday, and I don't care how many times I've seen or heard that song live. It's not enough. For me, what this kind of makes me think of, though, especially seeing it live or hearing a live version of it, makes me think of this. I have a job in my career, I should say, which I've been doing for a little over 20 years. I started my job in September of 2003, so it was 20 years last September. On and off, I have taken a couple breaks over the years, and I've not worked at one place for 20 years. I've traveled around a lot. I've lived all over the country. But I've been doing what I do for 20 years, and what I do is something that is very close to the public. I work with people directly all day, every day. I've been doing this for 20 years, and as I'm doing what I do for a living, generally you make conversation to pass the time of day. You listen, you tell stories, you listen to stories, you make conversation. It's nothing, that you're not creating a lifelong bond, but you pass the time. And when I hear live versions of Suede Head, it makes me think of, in my life, having, met thousands and thousands of people doing what I do, telling people the same stories about myself over and over and over and over again. It makes me think of what it must be like to be in a band or be an artist who has to sing, that one song that the thought of singing that song makes them want to rip their tongue out and tie a knot in it. And it makes me think of Suede Head in the case of Morrissey, because like I said, of all the times I've seen Morrissey live, I think this is the only song I've ever seen live. And I know in my daily life, dealing with people doing what I do, when I hear myself start telling these stories again, I just want to stab myself in the face sometimes, telling these stories that I've told for 20 years. Because every time you meet somebody new, they don't know who you are, so you got to tell them the same story again. It makes me think of also one of my favorite bands, or a band I really love. I don't know if they're necessarily one of my favorite bands, but a band that I've seen live many times over the years is the band Devo. And for some reason, when you go see Devo live, or at least in my experience going to see Devo live, the crowd, whenever I've gone to see Devo, the crowd is always kind of sort of half interested. For some reason, Devo doesn't necessarily draw the best fans. Now, hardcore Devo fans are awesome, and they're in every city, I'm sure, but around the hardcore Devo fans, there tend to be a lot of people who talk and giggle, and they're doing their own thing until the band breaks into the song Whip It. Now, to me, like I said, I really love the song Suede Head. I wish I could be more cynical and hate it like some Morrissey fans do. I don't. I like it. I like seeing it live. But for me, as in my Devo fandom, Whip It is not one of my favorite songs. I actually kind of don't even really like the song Whip It. I don't think it's really all that representative of Devo's catalog. But, they break into Whip It about halfway through the set. And, of course, all these sort of casual fans and people who are basically there just to hear that song. They're taking selfies and they're filming it. And you can tell the band is really sick of playing it because they play Devo at triple tempo just to get through it in about a minute. And, of course, they finish. The crowd goes crazy. Oh, dude, whip it. Oh. And then as soon as Devo breaks into the next song, all the people just start talking again and giggling and doing whatever they're doing. But that's what it makes me think of whenever I think of Morrissey playing Suede Head. Every time he plays that song, he must just, at this point in time, even on this record, which is, only pretty much 4 years into Suede Head's public life, Morrissey doesn't sound like he's having the greatest time singing Suede Head, even on this record. So I can imagine what it's like having to sing a song every night. It probably loses all meaning. The next song after that is a song called He Knows I'd Love to See Him. I love this song. Again, this is another song that I associate with, Bone of Drag. I like the song. I've always kind of laughed at the lyric on this song when he says, he knows, or I think he does. I don't know why. I always thought that was funny. This is a good version of that song. I don't think this is a song I've seen Morrissey do live either, thinking back on it. The next song after that is You're Gonna Need Someone on Your Side. Whoo, man, I love this song. And I love this version of this song. As I mentioned before, Your Arsenal was the second Morrissey album I ever bought after becoming a huge fan of Bone of Drag. And I remember, I don't know specifically why I chose Your Arsenal. Maybe it was just the used CD I happened to find that day at the record store. But I bought Your Arsenal and I took it home. And again, I was a huge fan of Bone of Drag. But at the time, I wasn't sure yet if I was a fan of that record or if I was genuinely a fan of Morrissey. And of course, You're Gonna Need Someone on Your Side is the very first song on the record, Your Arsenal. And I took it home and I listened to it. I put it on, and as soon as that song started, like I said, the reason why I'm so sentimental Your Arsenal as a record is because this is really the record that cemented me as a fan of Morrissey, not just Bone of Drag. But I remember as soon as I heard the song You're Gonna Need Someone on Your Side start, I was like, man, this guy is the goods. The next song after that is Glamorous Glue. I really like this song a lot as well. I love the studio version of this song, of course. I always associate this song as being the one off of Your Arsenal that Morrissey performed on Saturday Night Live. He had the gold lame sheet, which is an item which I put on my Morrissey Christmas wish list. Steve, so if you would like to send it to me, I will email you my address anytime you're interested. I do love the song Glamorous Glue, another song I really like the video. This is a great version of it on this song. The record ends with a live performance of We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful, another song off Your Arsenal that I am really a big fan of. This was this past year when Morrissey did the 40th anniversary tour down here in Memphis and Nashville. This was the only song off of Your Arsenal that he included on the set list. I remember in the first night in Memphis, this was actually the encore, and as the show was going on, I kept waiting to hear something off of Your Arsenal. It got to the point to where I was actually wondering if he was going to completely omit Your Arsenal. I couldn't even imagine that he was going to. And the first night he came out in Memphis and he played this as the encore. The second night in Nashville, this was the first song he played. And both nights he performed it great. No complaints there. My sort of, again, this is probably a minor complaint, but if I was going to only pick one song off of Your Arsenal to perform during the 40th anniversary tour, this isn't the one for me. Now, I love the song. I don't mind seeing it live. But, like I said, if you're only picking one song off Your Arsenal, you're picking We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful. I don't know, man. I think that was sort of not the greatest choice if you're going to just take one. I do like the song. I thought he performed it great both nights. I love the backdrop. Morrissey's stage. During that song, it said, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" or something like that. Very inspiring. It actually made me think a little bit, which is something that Steve is good at. I like this version of the song. It closes out the record. It makes me think of, in my personal life, I was friends with, back in my Seattle days, I was friends with somebody who was a musician, and I first became friends with them through my job. I met them doing what I do for a living. And he was a musician, and at the time I met him, I didn't know anything about who he was. I remember the first time I met him, he had been referred to me by somebody, by another client of mine. I didn't know much about him, so I met him. I had no idea who he was. And I remember I asked him, I met him in the morning, and I asked him, "Oh, are you working today?" And he's making small talk, like I said I do in my daily life. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I have to go do some work after this." And I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" Again. And he's like, "Oh, I'm a musician." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And he was like, you're a musician as your job? Like, you make a living at it?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm starting to gain a little bit of traction." And he and I got along really well. And over the course of the next couple, visits, he and I became friends. And then we started hanging out outside of what I do for a living. And he was somebody that was a musician. He was somebody who was, at first he was like a Seattle thing, and he began to sort of gain some national traction. And as the year or two that he and I were friends, I could definitely see the momentum building. I could see him, growing as an artist. He and I would go out and we would do things. We'd go to a couple live shows together. We would go get, coffee or whatever, and people would start to recognize him around town. He was always really super nice to everybody who recognized him. He was always very humble and grateful to, it was mostly younger kids that would come up and recognize him and praise him and explain their fandom to him. And at a certain point in time, I moved away, like I tend to. And right around the time I moved away, he just exploded. He became a household name all over the world. And it was something that I loved seeing because he was such a cool, nice, worthy individual. Now, his music isn't necessarily my luggage, never really was. But it was really exciting to be friends with somebody during that course of their musical career. Now, he's somebody that I have not kept in touch with over the years, nor would I expect to, because he's somebody now that is quite famous, and I'm not saying this just to name drop or associate myself with him, because that isn't really what I do. But it always makes me think of the song, We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful, because I did see this guy, knew this guy, right as he was really kind of like building, and then I left Seattle. I ended up moving to New Orleans around 2012, and when I moved to New Orleans, he just exploded, and I didn't hate it when he became successful. Is my point I'm trying to make. It's a long, boring, terrible story, but my point is, I loved it. I thought it was awesome, and now even when I see pictures of him or I see him online, he's not quite as big as he was for a while now, but he's still a household name. Everybody knows who he is. I couldn't be happier for the lad. So I disagree with you, Steve, on this one. We don't all hate it when our friends become successful. Some of us celebrate it. Some of us are happy for them. Some of us are able to look past our own misery once in a while. Anyway, man, that is the last song on Beethoven Was Deaf. Like I said, I believe that this album is every bit as good as Rank or Live at Earl's Court. Maybe not quite as celebrated as those two records are nowadays. Also, this is sort of weirdly hard to find. I've had this copy for a very long time on CD, but I was thinking about this the other day. I am in record stores all the time. I'm always looking through vinyl and CDs, and I always check the Morrissey CD bin just in case there's a single or something I don't have, or a print of it I don't have. And I was thinking about this the other day. I haven't seen this used even in a CD store forever, so I went on eBay just to see what the market was for this live CD, and there's really not a ton available even on eBay, and the ones that are pretty expensive, honestly. So this is a record that is sort of, I don't want to say it's slipped into obscurity, because that's not entirely accurate. But I do think that this is a record that is sometimes overlooked. Dare I say, almost kind of forgotten. But go back and check it out. I love this record. Like I said, I love the recording on this. It has the greatest Morrissey solo band, perform on it. The same band that recorded the record. I love Morrissey's performance on it. If you go back and check it out, I do not believe that you'll be disappointed. Anyway, man, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check back every week for Morrissey Monday, a weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. Anyway, until next time, my friends, I'll talk to you then.